Dear Blue, I wish I could see your triumph, knowing something of your mission, of the nature of your embedment, having committed the beat of your footsteps to my heart. I sense the change you will wreak upon us. The season turns, you will be free, from your recovery and from your task. I'll be sent, no doubt, to undo the damage you've caused, and we'll run again, the two of us, up thread and down, firefighter and fire starter, two predators only sated by each other's words. Do you laugh, sea foam? Do you smile, ice, and observe your triumph with an angel's remove? Sapphire-flamed phoenix, risen, do you command me once again to look upon your works in despair? I distract myself. I talk of tactics and of methods. I say I know how I know. I make metaphors to approach the enormous fact of you on slant. I send this letter on a falling star. Re-entry will score and test it, but will not melt it away. I write in fire across the sky, a plummet to match your rise. Your praise cuts me, because though I speak so easily of certain things, though I rush through ground that to you seems mined, it's only earth to me. But your last letter, I am so good at missing, at making myself not see. I stand at a cliff's edge, and hell. I love you, Blue. This Is How You Lose the Time War is a 2019 science fiction, time-bending romantic novella by Amal El-Mohtar and Max Gladstone. It follows two agents that are battling in the midst of the titular Time War, each representing two factions. Red represents the technocratic faction named the Agency. She is a cyborg of pseudoskin and programmable matter. Blue represents the plant-based hive mind faction named the Garden. She is a bioorganic shape-shifting creature. Both traverse space, time, and timelines trying to win the Time War, though it's not fought in battles, but instead little moments that snowball or butterfly effect into key points affecting the outcome of the war. In the struggles for victory between the viney, hivey elf world and the techie-mechie dystopia, Red and Blue begin a dialogue by leaving letters creatively hidden for one another to find. These messages are read in fascinating methods, from drinking and letting it materialize in one's mind, to reading the meaning in the knots of cloth. Their relationship is primarily told through an epistolary side of the novella, as their one-upsmanship and battlefield banter grows into respect, understanding, and love. The structure of the story threw me off in my first reading. The scenes are quite short, so they don't spend long establishing the time, the world, and other contexts of where and when they are, only giving the audience the briefest glimpses into their vast universe and its even vaster timelines. Trying to keep up with each new setting and then being torn from that into their letters and then thrown elsewhere in the multiverse for their next chapter gave a kind of whiplash of the imagination for me. However, as I kept reading and got more used to it, learning to not craft the scene in my head each time, it greatly helped the flow of the story, though I still needed a second read through to fully understand the whole story. The letters have clear voices and personalities attached to them, which makes sense since each writer focused on writing the letters of a single character, following a basic outline, then writing their character's next letter with a genuine surprise at the contents of the other character's letter, which crafts a realistic level of dialogue between the two. Despite my trouble getting into the flow of the text, in my opinion, the story has found its place in my heart. The slow build from enemies to lovers is carried seamlessly through the characters' instantly banterous nature, as well as their conflicting personalities stemming from their upbringing in their respective factions, and their inner yearning for a new and warm connection burns through their language. Even the running joke of them using more and more postscripts after their initial messages endear us to them, while showing us that they always want to say just a little bit more to one another. This love is confessed in my favourite letter of the story, Letter 16 from page 128 to 131, written by Red to Blue. In this letter is the first open declaration of love from one of the characters, and the writing shows that she gives in wholly to this love, as she doesn't hold back dancing it with her thoughts in these paragraphs. The structure is simplistic, the first paragraph approaching the topic from a skeptical perspective, trying to seem detached, almost as if Red is trying to convince herself that Blue is the enemy, and failing. The paragraph then goes on to admit how much she loves playing with Blue, submitting to their connection by relishing in their games, fighting one another as they have done so far, easing the readers into her confession of love, showing that she enjoys her dialogue with her. Poetry and references are employed in her following paragraphs, effectively encapsulating their dialogue throughout with clever language and callbacks, reminiscent of their banter, with word choice and their pop culture references. This also furthers the burning passion Red holds for Blue, with poetry being culturally connected with love and romance, which comes across in her description of a falling star. This excerpt ends with some self-doubts Red has about herself. While Blue adores her mind, Red again tries to distance herself from the connection by doubting her mind and the praise Blue has given her. This also connects back to the idea that she could be being manipulated, a fear that is expressed as she confesses she misses so many things, some of which might be subconsciously, bringing the elephant in the room to attention as she now cannot escape and must admit that she has fallen for Blue. Though her fear still lingers, as love and romance can be a scary endeavour, especially for opposing agents like Red and Blue, and so, even as she's confessing her love, she relates it to standing upon the precipice of salvation or damnation, and her following line shows that she's willing to test it. Let's look at the excerpt a little closer. Even the salutation, despite appearing as basic as it could be, holds a heightened meaning. Throughout their dialogue, Red and Blue present unique greetings in a way that displays their banter, their intelligence, their grasp of poetry, and their growing fondness from enemies to lovers. The only other time Red addresses Blue so directly was in another letter of serious emotions, when she thanked Blue in letter 10 for saving her life in chapter 10, which is also when she confessed that she no longer considers Blue to be her enemy, and she likes writing to her. Some of her sentences run short, punctuating a point, either on its own or before or after she elaborates. This gives her writing a kind of breath to it, falling, rising, giving a sense of the nervousness she may feel as it was written, almost like a beating heart. No sentence runs on, with the longer ones being distinctly cut up by commas that relieves the voice. This pacing quickens at the ends of the first and final paragraphs, with shorter focuses bringing attention to the tension being built, showing her state of mind. These passages also play with parallels a lot. One example is the mention of a risen sapphire in the middle, and then the mention of her ground being rushed, while Blue believes it is mined, connecting these ideas as if her perception of Blue was rushed or mined. Furthermore, the line, "Do you command me once again to look upon your works in despair," is a reference to the first line in the first letter, which is itself a reference to the poem Ozymandias by Percy Shelley. And in this context, Red is calling back to the start of their relationship, more poignant now than it has ever been as she prepares to take the next step, which now takes a double meaning, as the work she would despair on here is the love Red has for Blue, that she fears Blue may have set up in an attempt to win the Time War. I make metaphors to approach the enormous fact of view and slant is one of the many examples of meta-commentary provided through this novella, where the authors reference the workings of writing and the deconstruction of language, and here they do the same with poetry. This line raises questions as to the emotional literacy of the character due to their less connected upbringings. Red feels she can only comprehend Blue through metaphors and similes. This may also be a reference to Emily Dickinson's Tell All the Truth but Tell It Slant, a short metatextual poem about the nature of poetry, where the author aspires to write truths in a delicate and clever way, much like Red and Blue in their letters. Another note about the writing that is worth discussing is their relation to popular culture. As the characters are essentially timeless, they perceive all popular culture throughout time whenever they encounter it, and so nothing would be old-fashioned to them. They would have experienced a cultural singularity. This would mean their versions of memes would be far more wide-reaching than ours, which is evident in their usage of pop culture. On top of referencing the poem Ozymandias by Percy Shelley, and the poem by Emily Dickinson, they also reference songs from the late 1990s, such as Blue Dabba Dee by Eiffel 65. They reference passages from the Hebrew Bible, timeless rhymes, and surrealist romantic science fantasy movies from the 2010s. I would say that these opening paragraphs are part of one of the most cathartic and brutally honest letters in the whole novella, and that they are almost a microcosm of the whole story itself. They play with structure and pacing, character and their doubts and fears and paranoia and yearning, poetry and reference, and all while being a relatable message of opening one's heart out to another, putting themselves out there and risking it all. And that is why this is one of my favourite letters of the whole story. These lines are filled with tension, fear, doubts, desire, poetry, recollection, respect, and reverence. In essence, a perfect display of confession of love. It's no surprise that This Is How You Lose the Time War has won the British Science Fiction Association Award for Best Shorter Fiction, the Nebula Award for Best Novella of 2019, and the 2020 Hugo Award for Best Novella, as well as leading to the announcement of a television adaptation of the story, written by Gladstone and El-Mohtar. P.S. The cover, designed by Stadnyk, portrays a blue cardinal and a red ultramarine flycatcher, symbolizing both red and blue respectively. I believe this is the extent of that analysis. PPS. It's also hella gay and we stan.